Hokage Starting from the Instant Full Level, Chapter 621-640. Chapter 621, Kaido of the Beasts. However, if it is really because of a main ship from the 100 Beast Pirates, the Warring States period will make such a fuss. This is undoubtedly difficult to convince the public. Feeling the sudden change of atmosphere in the field, Sengoku's face sank slightly, and said, Akainu, I know you have a great prejudice against Laxus, but if it's just a battleship. No matter what. The three disasters, or the sixth son of the sky, etc. No matter how they hunt down, I won't be overly partial to Laxus, but the person who appears in the Fossa Sea area this time is Kaido. At this moment, Kaido's low voice echoed in the huge office as if it was filled with a demonic sound, and there was no way to dissipate it for a long time. Of the dozens of admirals present and even the generals including Akainu also changed drastically. 4 sovereigns, that is the existence that can make the sea shake by stomping his feet. Marshal of the Warring States, do you mean that Kaido is chasing Laxus? Ghost Spider said in a hurry, the 4 emperors personally went after and killed the people from our naval headquarters. He doesn't dislike shame, and he will also break the war agreement that we tacitly agreed to in private. He's not worried. Will our Navy headquarters have a full-scale battle with the Beast Pirates? The top power in the sea. Except for this group of lunatics from the Revolutionary Army, no one is willing to tear up the face with the Navy headquarters and commit themselves to pursue and kill them. After all, if the main force of the 4 emperors went to hunt down the generals of the Navy, in order to retaliate, the Navy would ask the generals to squat at the door of the 4 emperors every day. The final result, I am afraid the whole sea will be chaotic. No one will play like this unless they are really determined to go to war. Kaido's actions now undoubtedly give people a feeling of breaking the rules of the sea game. The huge conference hall fell into an inexplicable silence. The eyes of all the people present swiped and locked on the body of Warring States. Their most urgent thought now is to find out and face the challenge of Kaido. What is the plan of Sengoku as a naval marshal? However, before Sengoku could open his mouth, Akainu said, Marshal Sengoku, you called us so urgently, it is not your intention. With the weakening of the naval headquarters, in order to pull an arrogant person, let our naval headquarters, let's go to war with the Beast Pirates, one of the 4 emperors. Do you know that once the war begins, the weakened naval headquarters will be directly hit hard? Once that time comes, what else do we have to maintain the peace of this sea? Voice fell, and the atmosphere of the huge conference room changed again. Akainu's remarks seem very arbitrary, but it is not without reason. After the defeat in the War of Ward, the current naval headquarters, but cannot withstand another defeat. Not to mention, he started a war with Kaido, one of the 4 emperors. Like a nightmare. Damn, Akainu, do you mean, are you going to help the members of the headquarters without saving you? Warring States shouted in a deep voice. Don't forget, Laxus was targeted by the beasts Kaido because of the rescue of members of our headquarters. If people from the outside world know that our naval headquarters are not saving our own people, then I am afraid that it will chill the hearts of everyone here. The expressions of the admirals present changed slightly. In their eyes, Akainu is right in the big picture. However, in terms of love, the Warring States is also not wrong. Who was hunted down by Kaido this time was one of them. I believe that no one wants to see this kind of thing that can't be saved. Marshal of the Warring States period, do you mean to think that the Navy headquarters has to ruin our Navy headquarters for an arrogant person who has not officially become a Navy yet? Akainu suddenly stood up. The hot molten slurry circulated on the surface of the body, and a tense atmosphere spread out from the heart. Seeing the scene that seemed like a palace, made everyone's nerve strings tense. Okay, you guys are arguing endlessly here, and there is a bird to use. What if that kid doesn't need your help? Carp put his feet on the table and said with a nonchalant expression on his nose. These words fell, the tense atmosphere instantly changed, there is nothing left. As Garp said, if Dragon Feather doesn't need it, They are messing around here, and they are useless. Warring states, I also think that what Carp said is correct. First contact Laxus about this matter and then calculate. Crane also opened his mouth and said, what's more, we are too far from the Fossa Sea area, and it will take several days to get there now. If possible, try to let Laxus escape back to the New World. After all, there are a lot of powers that can check and balance him here. As the General Staff of the Navy, his remarks obviously convinced many people. Akainu's face sank, the fiery molten lava on his body completely subsided, and he sat upright on the chair, saying, HMPH, facing the beast Kaido, I think he will definitely ask for help. I advise you, if you can get in touch with him, let him hurry back to the vicinity of the Navy headquarters, so maybe Kaido the Beasts will still have some scruples. Akainu, shut up for me, if you don't say it, no one will blame you. Warring States snorted coldly, if you are worried that you will lose the gambling battle in a month, I won't blame you. Chapter 622, You Disgusting Guy. Akainu suddenly became angry. Looking at the two who were almost choking their necks to fight, the Crane sighed helplessly, took out the emergency phone bug that Zephyr had left behind, and dialed it directly. Gulu gulu. The call of the phone bug rang out abruptly. Immediately, the repressed atmosphere in the arena suddenly collapsed. The attention of everyone in the field was locked on the phone bug. Mosamoxi, I'm Laxus, is there anything urgent for Mr. Zeph's voice suddenly sounded. When he left in the Chambord Islands, Zephyr gave Long Yu an emergency phone number for the convenience of contact. I'm Crane, this is the phone bug that Zephyr temporarily handed me to contact you. Crane spoke first. She knew very well that Akainu would definitely think it was unfair if the matter was handed over to Sengoku. So the Crane still intends to handle it himself. It turned out to be Lieutenant General Crane. I thought that at this juncture, calling me should be for the 100 Beast Pirates. Long Yu touched the tip of his nose and headed straight for the subject. Crane was stunned for a moment, then said with a smile, so, Laxus, you are already mentally prepared, knowing that the people from the Beast Pirates will come to you. However, I know that you are a master of art and daring, and your strength is also very good, but the next thing, you must listen to it calmly, and then immediately. By giving an answer can we properly resolve the matter. The nerves of the people present were gradually tense. After all, Long Yu's answer will affect the fate of their naval headquarters. Lieutenant General Crane can just say whatever he wants, no need to beat around the bush. Long Yu said with a smile. He took a deep breath and said, since, Laxus, you are mentally prepared, so I can only say it straight. Beast Kaido wants to kill you, he has already come to the Fossa Sea area in person, I think with his ability, he will find you soon. Now we want to know, what did you say about the strategy, which sounded like a long speech, fell on everyone's nerves, and it was tense to the extreme. Everyone's eyes swiped and locked on the phone bug. That feeling, as if crossing the distance, eager to see the change in Long Yu's expression now. You mean, the Beast Kaido, did you come in person? Long Yu suddenly spoke, and after a pause, he said with a smile, I've been waiting for him for a long time. Thank you, Lieutenant General He, for giving me the information on purpose. The simple answer made the huge discussion hall become, the needle fell. In their conjecture, Laxus, as a junior, heard the news that Kaido, the beast, came running towards his head. Even if he didn't kneel down and ask for help in fright, he should have been confused. However, now Long Yu gave them the feeling that he was talking about a very ordinary thing. Laxus, aren't you afraid? That's Kaido. Warring States was the first to lose his breath and asked anxiously. Afraid that Long Yu was stunned for a moment, he immediately said with a smile, it turns out that the Marshal of the Warring States is also there. It seems that because of my affairs, I am afraid that you will be in trouble. However, Kaido is just the beast. I have waited for a long time, and I already wanted him to try the knife for me. If there's nothing else, hang up first, Luffy, but he's clamoring to go ashore. Luffy Garp's eyes suddenly lit up, and he didn't care about the booger on his hands. He snatched the phone bug away, and hurriedly shouted, "Laxus, Luffy, is there any? Obey your training. If there is any disobedience, you don't have to look at the old man's face, even if you beat him to death." "Grandpa, am I your biological child? You have to treat me like this." "Bah, you are not my own, you are my own." "My father, who is my father?" Luffy's shouting sound also came from inside the phone bug. Hearing this questioning, He Chang endured the possible booger on the phone bug, and quickly hung up the phone bug. What are you doing? Let me talk a little more." The busy tone coming from the phone bug, Carp couldn't help complaining. "Shut up, if you keep babbling on, you'll even pull that guy out. By then, your grandson will not only be yelling about being a pirate, but I'm afraid he'll also be a revolutionary army." Warring States glared at Garp and said, "Also, when you enter the conference room in the future, it is strictly forbidden to pick your nostrils." "No, it should be within my line of sight, and absolutely not." No, this is your senbei, do you want to eat it?" Garp pulled out the fingers stuck in his nostrils, took out a senbei from his pocket, and handed it over. "Go away, you disgusting bastard." "No, why did you steal my senbei again?" Chapter 623, Are we leaving by ourselves? Looking at the Warring States that was about to explode, Crane glanced helplessly. The phone bug that didn't want to put away, coughed dryly and said, "Okay, Marshal Warring States, don't worry about Garp now. I want to know, what are your plans?" Now Long Yu has given the answer. Not only that, he didn't intend to seek help from the Navy headquarters, and he didn't intend to run away. Instead, he opened his mouth and said that he had been waiting for Kaido's appearance from the very beginning. He also said madly, waiting for him to try the knife well. If you hadn't heard it with your own eyes, who would believe it? It's all true. For a time, in the huge conference room, dozens of pairs of eyes swiped and locked on Sengoku's body, even Akainu was no exception. Feeling the change in the atmosphere in the arena, after the Warring States period changed, he sighed heavily and said, "Forget it, since that kid has already made a decision. As the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, I also need to take care of the overall situation. If Laxus can rush back to the Navy headquarters in time, we will do our best to bless him. If he insists on challenging Kaido, then it will be his own destiny. No matter what. The outcome is entirely in his own hands." After these words fell, many people secretly breathed a sigh of relief. However, there was more confusion on everyone's face. After all, in their eyes, facing the beast's Kaido, this kind of existence known as the King of the Sea, who is known as the supernova of the Navy headquarters, has no confidence to face it. This kind of thing, a little careless, it is the end of being hammered to death. At the same time, thousands of meters away from the destination Kingdom of Ruins, the sloop was circling the island, looking for a shore where it could dock. Was standing on the deck, looked at the phone bug in his hand with a smile on his face. He did not expect that after defeating Drought Jack, he would be able to attract a beast Kaido. Along with that, his strength gradually recovered, and it became more and more difficult for him to shake the world and obtain the turbulence value. Even defeating a sea like Jack with a reward of 1 billion, there is no way for this sea to stir up so many waves. This undoubtedly drove Long Yu to target the 4 emperors. Now that Kaido's appearance has undoubtedly allowed Long Yu to prove his thoughts. If this can be worth more, he doesn't mind, and he will go to the mountain for the 4 emperors. Teacher Laxus, Lieutenant General Crane contacted you urgently just now. Is there anything important? Of the Navy, Ian knew exactly what it meant when the golden phone bug in Long Yu's hand rang. However, as soon as the voice fell, there was a burst of chestnut oncoming, and it flicked directly on the smooth forehead. You little gossip, with me, what can happen? Long Yu looked at Ain, who was covering his forehead, smiled and rubbed her head, saying, wait a while, I will go ashore with Zoro. You drive this ship, take Sanji to the next destination, what you have to do is to leave him on the island. Then, go to the Chambord Islands and wait for me to join you. We leave by ourselves. Ayin couldn't help but startled and said, Teacher, won't you come with us? If there is any problem, I can find Teacher Zepha, and he will definitely help you. Looking at the order Long Yu gave them, Ayin clearly smelled something wrong. She has not graduated from the Navy boot camp, but it does not mean that she is really a fool. Okay, you girl, why do you keep mentioning that old man's name Zepha? You are my student now, and you should grow up. Long Yu patted Ayin on the shoulder with a smile, and said, there is no such thing as a feast in the world. Sooner or later, you should be on your own and go out to sea to carry out your mission. This is the teacher. I leave you with the first task. If I can't see you in the Chambord Islands, I will spank you. Ah! Ayin subconsciously let out a soft cry, and under the blushing cheeks, she awkwardly moved her body. Lu Mei raised her eyebrows a little, met Long Yu's gaze, tipped her toes slightly, and leaned forward towards Long Yu. The sudden scene made Long Yu stunned. Is this an intention to force a kiss? However, before he could react, Ayin obviously underestimated the so-called cutest height difference. Of Laxus is at least 2 meters in height. Ayin's current height is only about 1.6 meters. Standing on tiptoes, it would be good if she could touch her chin. Teacher, here we are. Dusky's voice suddenly sounded. Soon, footsteps came from the cabin. Originally intended to stand on tiptoe and hug the passionate Ayin, she was startled for a while, and then she was completely awake under her hot mind. Quickly raised his slender hand and grabbed it towards Long Yu's chest. Chapter 624, The World's #1 Swordsman. What are you doing? No, Ain, what are your hands doing? Dusky's voice sounded again. Looking at Ayin, the pair of hands like dragons going out to sea just happened to press on certain positions, and her cheeks flushed slightly. Of Dusky's questioning, Ayin was stunned for a moment, then screamed, blushed, turned around and hurriedly ran away. Looking at Ain who hid in the cabin in a blink of an eye, Long Yu returned to his senses, rubbed Dasky's head with his hand, and said, Dasky, I think you are also very interested in this island, you come with me too. I can go too. Dasichi couldn't help but startled, and said, I thought, teacher, that you only have Zoro in your eyes. For Dasichi, she was the first person to meet Long Yu in this small group. Anyway, it's like an old man. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, there are more and more people on board, and the strength of each person has become stronger and stronger. It made Dusky feel that his sense of existence was gradually weakened. Okay, you girl, don't be jealous anymore. I have already handed over the next voyage to Ayin, and something will happen next, you just follow my orders and do it. Long Yu smiled and scratched Dasiki's Chong's nose. When something else happened, Dasichi was slightly startled, and a blush appeared on her cheeks. In the face of what Long Yu said, and the scene that happened just now, he was undoubtedly thinking crooked. Mr. Laxus, we have moored the boat, what is ahead? Sauron fastened his 3 sabers and came to the front of the deck. Looking at the gradually darkened, misty and ruined forest, a smell of loneliness and desolation came towards me. This is the ruins kingdom where Hokage Mahak is located. Long Yu did not hide it, and looked forward lightly. He didn't use his arrogance and domineering, but the keen sense of touch that he had sharpened after fighting for a long time has caught the eyes of all around him. Eagle-eyed Mahak, world's greatest swordsman. Zoro was stunned, and looked at Long Yu in disbelief. Half a day ago, Long Yu had promised him, and when he touched the corner of his clothes, he took him to see Hokage Mahak. However, Sauron never imagined that he was directly defeated when he was full of confidence and even chanted the profound meaning before halfway through. I thought that I wouldn't have the chance to meet Hokage so quickly, but I didn't expect to arrive at the island where Hokage is now. But the excitement just came. Soren's mind emerged, and the next moment, a more important matter suddenly sounded, and said, Teacher, you said earlier that the student looking for the third gambler, wouldn't it be Hokage? That guy, but the world's #1 swordsman. I'm afraid he wants to become a student. Speaking of which, let alone Zoro, even Dasichi, who was beside him, couldn't help but look at Long Yu. In their eyes, accepting the world's #1 swordsman as a student is simply impossible. If he really agreed, it would be a shame that every swordsman in the entire sea would consider it a shame. Hee, who is my third target? You'll know when the time comes. Long Yu patted Zoro on the shoulder and said, let's go, time is running out. I hope that guy is on the island. Besides collecting people, I have another thing for him to help with. For the beast's Kaido, it is possible to seek revenge in person. Long Yu still needs to do a little more preparation. With the character template of Laxus, there may be no way to defeat Kaido, or even kill him. But at least Kuroba didn't want to give up this important opportunity. At the same time, in the distant sea area, a pirate ship quickly turned around and left. On the bow deck also quickly called the phone bug. Long Yu didn't know about all this, and even if he knew, he wouldn't care. 3 of them, led by Long Yu, landed on the coast. Seeing Ain in the cab, he nodded, and immediately sail away. Zoro couldn't hold back. He took the lead to look back at the woods, and when he thought of meeting Hokage Mihawk, he couldn't wait to step out. However, the footsteps have just set foot on the shrubland. He could react. Dusky's urgent cry rang out first. Be careful. PFF'd. The sound of breaking the air suddenly sounded, and a sharp arrow with cold light shone suddenly in the dark. Headed towards Sauron Lacing. Seeing this violent scene, Zoro's expression changed slightly, and the 3 generations of Onikiri, who had a backhand on his waist, caught him, and the famous sword was instantly unsheathed. When the sound of metal collision suddenly sounded, the incoming sharp arrow was directly shot into the air, and it was inserted obliquely on the tree trunk not far away. However, before Sauron could react, a black shadow flashed behind Long Yu like a ghost. The sharp blade raised in his hand turned even more cold, and slashed down towards Long Yu. In the dim moonlight, I could vaguely see which grim face. Chapter 625, Hokage Mihawk's Pet. You chose the wrong opponent. Long Yu smiled and nodded, looking at the sharp blade that was rapidly expanding in his pupils, and moved suddenly. Dang! The crisp metal collision sound suddenly echoed. The incoming sharp blade was instantly pinched by 2 fingers before it was an inch away from Long Yu. The violent scene made the attacker's pupils shrink, his face full of disbelief. No, it should be said that the animals that attacked were full of disbelief. It's a baboon. Zoro couldn't help but startled. The baboon in front of him subverted his cognition, not only wearing leather armor, but also holding weapons. The sneak attack just now can be regarded as fast, accurate and ruthless. Human-like baboons are native animals of the Ruins Kingdom, and they are also the pets of Hokage Mihawk. After hesitating for a moment, Long Yu chose a relational adjective for the relationship between Hokage and baboon. In fact, this can't be blamed on Long Yu, it must be explained deliberately. A big man stayed on a desert island with a group of baboons who looked like people. If there is such a day, you will be single for a long time, and you will be beautiful in everything you see. Not good to say, evil fire together, chrysanthemum. One tight. It feels like chrysanthemums in the mountains. The mountains are blooming. Woo. With the baboon's cry, he hurriedly drew his knife and turned around, intending to take his way and escape. If you want to go, I plan to let you lead the way. Second fingers of Long Yu's right hand suddenly exerted force, and the sharp blade that was flowing with cold light snapped. The next moment, with the instant Long Yu's wrist flipped, the sharp blade made a stern sound of breaking through the air, and swept straight towards the baboon's chest. PFF'd. Scarlet blood splattered out, looking a little unsightly under the moonlight. The baboon who made a sneak attack, the moment his muscles tensed, fell straight behind him. Bang! The dust stirred up, and seeing this violent scene, Zoro and Dusky couldn't help but be stunned. Teacher, You killed Hawkeye's pet. No. Long Yu glanced at the baboon and said, Hawkeye's pet will not die so easily. Won't die. Zoro and Dusky, the baboons who subconsciously look at the ground. I saw the baboon, like a demented child, suddenly sat up. He stuck out his index finger and smeared the saliva in his mouth, smearing it on the wound on his chest. After watching the baboons roaring, Zoro and Dusky were stunned. Where did you learn to ride a horse? Can you heal your wounds with saliva? Zoro exploded all of a sudden. Dusky's face. The cheek muscles are also twitching. This baboon-like behavior is not imitating Hawkeye, right? Okay, now is not the time to spit, the next thing is the real test. Long Yu patted Zoro on the shoulder and looked towards the dense forest ahead. The first thing that came into view was a pair of eyes that lit up in the dark. Feeling the change in the surrounding atmosphere, Zoro and Dusky's nerves suddenly tightened. Teacher, is this the training you arranged? Zoro bit Hidayi into his mouth with his backhand and said, this seems a little too simple. Simple. Long Yu smiled playfully and said, then I'll leave it to you, don't lose the teacher's face, there will be good dramas in the future. Abandoning these words, Long Yu walked out on his own. Hawkeye. Zoro was slightly startled. In his eyes, after defeating this group of baboons, the final part should be on Hawkeye. Thinking of this, Zoro's eyes couldn't help but heat up. Roar. The roar sounded suddenly. The baboons hidden all around burst into flames. The huge body, under the dark shadow, and the various weapons in his hands, make people feel even more dazzled. Just that all the eyes of the swarming baboons turned around, all locked on Long Yu's body. In their eyes, the baboon who could easily defeat the first temptation, the human being in front of him should be the most dangerous existence. It seems that the presence of too strong is also a mistake. Long Yu lightly nodded his head and looked around, seeing the domineering look, as he rolled back like a frenzy. Under the siege from all directions, Long Yu stepped out. The golden thunder light exploded like a frenzy, turning into a shocking giant, blazing out in the airtight combined attack. Under the stunned expression of a group of baboons, they went straight through the jungle and plundered into the depths of the island. Dusky, it seems that we all let these beasts underestimate. I will open the way, and you will cover me. Zoro tied his turban tightly, biting and saying to Daoyi. The back of the sakura knife is swiftly slashed. Tied, and the cherry blossoms are entwined. Dusky stepped down suddenly, and the shaving in the 6 naval styles was performed to the extreme. During the period of following Long Yu, I have seen all kinds of powerhouses, and Dasichi is no longer the cute and silly white sweet from a few months ago. The face of battle, her decisive attitude and self-awareness of the lack of women's natural physical fitness. The route that Dasichi took was undoubtedly the only one who followed Long Yu. Bang bang bang. Please download Fakin latest chapter to read the novel without underline. Chapter 620th, Dizzying. Flash of cold light, the 3 baboons just failed to attack Long Yu, and they stood firm. Then he felt the cold behind him, and the attack had already hit. However, as Hawkeye's pet, Dusky is obviously merciful and only attacks with the back of the knife. Blink of an eye, the 3 baboons fell to the ground, rolled their eyes, and passed out. Dasichi, who shot, didn't stop for a while, and his figure flashed like a ghost, quickly flashing behind the next target. That feeling gave people a kind of illusion, like a wolf entering a flock, and it was simply a woman who wouldn't let a man. Don't be in a daze and drag the teachers back, but I can't wait, you. Dusty's voice floated. Immediately. Awakened Sauron, who was absent-minded. He hurriedly looked at the back that quickly swept away. Recalling the rhetoric just now, Zoro's face was a little unbearable. He suddenly clenched the famous sword in his hand, and muttered unwillingly. If you can, join the teacher's command earlier, I'm afraid you won't be so passive. This reminded Sauron of how often he was defeated when he was a child. Other hand, in the central castle of the Ruins Kingdom. The old palace, the light of candles is shaking. The two figures sat opposite each other. Hokage grabbed the teacup in his hand and took a sip, then looked in front of him, the baboon king with a fierce face like Roshan. I don't have anything to teach you. It's a bit difficult to show domineering. With the racial gap between us, it's very difficult for you to understand. Hokage put down the teacup in his hand and said lightly. In this kingdom of ruins, besides him, there is a group of baboons that look like people. Although, this group of baboons has almost human intelligence. However, it is still lacking in comparison with humans. As for the gigantic baboon king in front of him, he was the most talented and strongest being among the baboons. The only thing that makes people feel pity, no matter what. Matter how hard Hokage gave instructions and demonstrations, there was no way to raise the strength of the baboon king again. The fur clan he had seen before. Someone has landed on the island. Hokage brows. It seemed a little surprising. After the ruined kingdom was destroyed by war, it was occupied by him. After losing the natural enemy of human beings, such groups also grew rapidly. Usually, the eagle eye will smell the color and always cover the whole island. Only when I rest at night, I will relax a little bit. Never thought that such a desolate island, and knowing that he exists, there are still people who will recklessly land on the island. Woo! Baboon King hissed a few times, clearly understood what Hokage meant, and stood up on the ground. You mean to leave it to you? Hokage looked at the Baboon King who nodded again and again, but did not continue to speak. His expression changed suddenly, and before he had time to think about it, he hurriedly pulled out the black sword knight on the back of the chair. The black light is like a tide, with a piercing sound of knives. Under the domineering lock of seeing and hearing, Hokage went straight to the Baboon King. The violent scene made the Baboon King stunned. Under the thinking that it is slightly inferior to human beings, it is undoubtedly impossible to figure it out, and the eagle eye that was like a brother to himself just a moment ago. Why would you draw a knife to yourself? However, in the face of this violent blow, the Baboon King could only follow his body's fighting consciousness, and hurriedly backhanded and touched the cottage black knife on his back. However, at the moment of starting, the feeling of emptiness made the Baboon King stunned. As a great swordsman, all of his combat power is above weapons in all likelihood. Now that there is no weapon, isn't that the fish on the chopping board, let someone slaughter it. The sudden scene made the Baboon King stunned in place, unable to react. The only thing he could do was to watch the eagle-eyed black knife rapidly dilate in his pupils. Whoosh! A sudden burst of air sounded from behind the Baboon King. The familiar huge black knife, under the entanglement of thunder, stabbed straight at the black knife slashed out of Hawkeye's hand at a tricky angle. It is like a lacing of thunder, giving people a feeling of dizzying. Bang! The dull metal collision sounded, thunderlight and sparks splashed down, and a tyrannical blast of wind and waves rolled back. Hawkeye's expression changed slightly, and he quickly pulled back the black knife in his hand. At the same time, the armed color quickly spread, covering the black knife knight quickly. After finishing all this, the eagle eyes turned and landed on Long Yu's body, saying, with the power of lightning that bursts in an instant, it forms a huge impact thrust. This is the attack method to destroy the blade. I didn't expect that the Navy supernova Laxus would appear in a deserted place like me, and he was a master of swordsmanship. Hawkeye is on one side, but the intelligence source is also well informed. Long Yu's ups and downs in the Chambord Islands with Laxus, this character template, are no worse than any major event. Hawkeye, you are laughing, my sword move, in front of you, is just an axe. Long Yu smiled genially, and threw the huge black sword in his hand to the stunned Baboon King. In its simple thinking, there is no way to think clearly about the huge black knife that it is carrying. Why did it fall into Long Yu's hands? Chapter 627, Throwback. You are too humble. Watching Long Yu return the huge black saber, Hawkeye also put away the domineering armament and put the black saber back into its sheath. He went straight to the back of the bar, took out a clean cup, poured the freshly brewed black tea on it, and said, "During this time, the Navy headquarters has been slumped one after another, and the face has lost too much. Your sudden rise, for this sea, is an unexpected variable. However, I heard that you were being hunted down by the beast pirates, and you suddenly landed in the ruins kingdom. It's not just looking for a pirate like me to talk about it. It's that simple. Or did the Navy headquarters ask you to bring me the so-called Shichibukai Treaty?" Having said this, Hokage shook his head and said, "I have already done my best to encircle Wald, so I don't need to obey any of your summoning orders for the next year. In the Chiwahai, if the tyrant bear is the most obedient errand, Crocodile and Doflamingo are unruly beings, then Hawkeye is the one who likes to paddle the most. Every call to order will come. Go on the court with 2 swings of the big sword and then go off the court, neither killing people nor doing real work. But it gives people a kind of feeling, there is no way to find fault. Therefore, in the Navy, and even in the world government, it is difficult for anyone to find fault. Don't worry, I'm here just to ask you to borrow King Baboon." Long Yu took the black tea, took a sip, and looked at the vicious Baboon King behind him. "You have to borrow it." Hawkeye was startled. In his eyes, Laxus took a lot of trouble to go to the Ruins Kingdom, it should be to avoid the pursuit of the beast pirates. Now suddenly wanting to borrow King Baboon from him is undoubtedly a kind of intriguing feeling. "Hawkeye, don't be surprised." Long Yu turned his head and said, "I heard what you said just now. The Baboon King has extraordinary academic ability, imitating everything you have learned in your life, but the 2-color domineering is a threshold for him, unless he has the animal system, the phantom fruit, which may enable him to open his intelligence and strength. Can go further. But, as far as I know, everyone has been taken, so it is difficult for baboons to learn to be domineering in 2 colors. Human fruit." Hawkeye was slightly startled, and said, "I didn't expect that, you even know this. Since, you know, the Baboon King's power is limited, why do you want it?" "The Baboon King did kendo my life. Imitated, but if there is no domineering premise, if the strength is placed on the sea, it can only be compared with the ordinary rear admiral, and it will not work for you. In the eyes of Eagle Eyes, imitation and winning are 2 completely different levels of definition. Imitate is only to have its shape, but not its spirit. Only by winning a person's kendo inheritance, can the kendo power of Eagle Eye be brought into play. For this, Hawkeye believes that the young man in front of him will never be clear. What others can't do doesn't mean I can't do it." Long Yu put down the teacup in his hand. "I believe that the Baboon King should be the descendant of the fur family. He has been trapped on this island for too long, and has such a high talent. Don't you think it is a pity to stay here? The most important point, you should have heard of why the Navy headquarters made an exception to recruit me." The slightly elusive voice echoed in the hall, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. The Fur Clan has existed for as long as humans. At least, not many people know how many years Zou lived. No one knows how many Fur Clans have come out on Zou. No one knows how many offspring are born outside. However, according to Long Yu's guess, with such a high talent and strong fighting power, the Baboon King may be related to the Fur Clan. With this connection, Long Yu can try to use the Bone King's bloodline reshaping talent to bring the Baboon King back to his ancestors. It seems that the news from the Navy headquarters is not false. No wonder even Zepha is eager to recruit you into the Navy recruit camp to replace his position. Hawkeye put down the teacup in his hand and said, "However, it shouldn't be so easy for you to help me train the Baboon King like this. Has sailed alone in the sea for a long time, and has survived to this day. He has reached the top position of the world's #1 swordsman. He clearly knows that there is no free lunch in this world. Hawkeye, you are a wise man." Long Yu smiled and patted the dust on his body, and said, "Beast Kaido will soon catch up with me. Facing him, I don't have the slightest chance of winning now, so I hope you can guide me in kendo, or in other words, have a fight with me." It's a bit unexpected to play Hokage with you. He never thought that Long Yu's real purpose was to imitate some kendo fur from him, just like the Baboon King. Chapter 628, Persuasion. The most important point is that under the personal pursuit of Kaido of the Beasts, he can still be so calm. Looking at this sea, I am afraid that only Long Yu can do it. This bit of confidence and courage is amazing. Was dead silence in the hall. The Baboon King was angry that Long Yu took his black knife without authorization. However, as Hokage said, the Baboon King has an IQ second only to humans. At the same time, it is also possible to have the blood of the Fur clan, so I vaguely know that the conversation between this strange young man and his own father is related to his baboon's life. Intuition tells it that if this opportunity can be grasped, great changes may occur. Thinking of this, the Baboon King couldn't help standing up and looked at Hokage. You want to go with him? Hokage met the sight of the Baboon King. It can be said that he was not surprised by all this. Seeing the latter nod heavily, Hokage sighed. I didn't expect that you would be able to convince even a beast. I know that you are fighting my swordsmanship idea, but I don't care how much you understand in one fight. At the same time, I will also not help you in the next hunt for Kaido. If you die, your skills are not as good as others, and you can't complain. Hawk-eyed Mihawk, as one of the 7 martial seas, is indeed powerful enough to let him run amok on this sea. However, I also don't want to be followed by a group of small tails. Don't worry, if you put your hopes on others, do you think I can still joke with you here? Long Yu laughed dryly, patted the dust on his body, stood up, and said, however, next, I am not here during this time, I hope you will take it in, my stupid students, they are all good swordsmen. Student Hawkeye was slightly startled, just thinking about it, guarding Long Yu, completely ignoring the guard on the island. After he regained his senses, he quickly swept away the domineering look he had seen, and his expression changed slightly. Come on, go out and see, they're all fun kids. Long Yu was the first to turn around and walk outside the gate. The Baboon King followed quickly. That posture, it was obvious that he had become a servant of the 3 surnames and had left behind Hawkeye's old teachings. Looking at the 2 figures that were leaving quickly, Hawkeye's cheeks were slightly muscled, and there was a feeling of being a girl who didn't want to stay. However, what he cared about the most was Laxus Road, the beast Kaido was chasing him. At the same time, if there is no way, why stay here and ask him to teach swordsmanship? Could it be that a simple fight is enough? Enough to increase his chances of survival. Still hiding these messy thoughts in his backhands, Hawk-eyed Mihawk put Black Saber Knight on his back and walked out of the door quickly. Soon as he stepped out of the threshold, he saw unconscious baboons lying on the ground in the dilapidated castle yard. Who were slightly out of breath, stood in the field. I killed 365 baboons, you killed 364, I won. Sauron bit Hidao's words, and said anxiously, ignoring the sweat on his forehead. Different from the original book, now Zoro is under Long Yu's command, and he has learned to be domineering in armed color. The overall strength has improved a lot. Not a problem for these baboons. Most importantly, in this battle, Sauron had been holding back for so many years, unwilling to lose his heart, he just carried out a small universe explosion, and forcefully snatched the last baboon. No, there is one last, and we can decide the outcome. Dusky glanced at her, her hands trembling slightly. Looked up at the gate of the castle entrance, and past the familiar figure. The first to catch the eye is a huge baboon king that is close to 6 or 7 meters. The huge black sword knight and the leather armor on his body caused Soren's pupils to shrink slightly. However, what shocked them even more was the last figure to come out. The world's #1 swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk. 3 minutes, 35 seconds, and defeated more than 700 baboons. It seems that during this time, your strength has improved, which makes me very happy. Long Yu looked at Zoro and Dusky indifferently. However, your next opponent is not Hawkeye, but the new student Baboon King the first just accepted. The new students Zoro and Dusky couldn't help being stunned. Just 3 or 4 minutes apart, the most powerful humanoid baboon on the island was taken away. This speed is too fast to make people doubt life. Roar! The Baboon King slammed his hands towards his chest suddenly, his fangs protruded, and he opened his mouth and roared. Looking at the Baboon King in a blink of an eye, he directly admitted his identity. Hokage Mahawk's cheek muscles were twitching. If it weren't for the trouble, Long Yu would have wanted to beat the Baboon King severely. Teacher, do you think this is the last opponent between me and Zoro? After Dusky glanced at Hokage, he took the lead and said, is it one-on-one? If it's one-on-one, I'm worried, it's a bit unfair. For a swordsman, especially in front of the world's #1 supreme swordsman. Chapter 629, Century-Level Steel Straight Man. 1-on-2 Kendo competition is a shame that humiliates Kendo. Mentioned Dusky, even Sauron felt ashamed. 1-on-2, as new students, you all have the knives I gave, but the Baboon King already has the imitation Black Knife Knight, then I will give you a good fortune. Long Yu looked at the Baboon King indifferently. 1-on-2, perhaps an insult to Kendo. However, for Long Yu, the Baboon King has always been imitating, unable to take the most critical step, or there is a defect in wisdom. If Castbone King's bloodline remodeling is successful, once the defects of the Baboon King can be made up, and the accumulation of accumulated resources, I am afraid there will be a qualitative change. At that time, it would be difficult to take advantage of the current Zoro and Dusky alone, 1-on-1. Teacher, this doesn't seem right. Sauron was in a hurry. However, he was quickly stopped by Dasiki's probe and said, this is the teacher's decision. As a student, I hope you don't express doubts. If I were you, I would increase my breathing, regain my strength a little bit, and deal with it. The next fight. Don't forget, no matter what. How many baboons have you defeated in front of you, and the king of baboons in front of you, is the fundamental decision of winning or losing. Facing the solemn Dusky, Zoro was stunned. Recalling the fight with Long Yu not long ago, just as Dasichi said. As a teacher, Long Yu must have seen things they couldn't see. Otherwise this decision would not have been made. For a time, Sauron, who was originally dissatisfied, fell into silence, and then slowly calmed down, preparing for the battle just like Dusky. Are these two of your students with good eyes? Hokage looked at Long Yu and said, however, the strength of the Baboon King is very good, and he has also imitated what I have learned in my life, but based on this alone, I am afraid it is difficult to win the two students of yours. This may be a little bit for the Baboon King. Not good. As the teacher of the Baboon King, I have been with it for a long time. For Hokage, it is strange to have no feelings. In the original work, his concern for ghost girls is also often reflected. It's just that as a century-level straight man of steel, it is difficult for Hawkeye's thinking to bend, and it is impossible for him to persuade him softly. However, if you want to keep your eagle eyes open and watch your little brother suffer. Not only is it unfair to the Baboon King, but the eagle face can't hold back. After all, the two swordsmen's disciples fought, and for Hawkeye, this was also an indirect fight between him and Long Yu. Woo! Facing Hawkeye's kindness, the Baboon King took the lead in grinning and roaring, obviously thinking that Hawkeye had underestimated him. Looking at this scene, Eagle Eye felt that his kindness was taken away by the baboons. He resisted the urge to hammer in his heart, and after glancing at it, he said, well, you guy, it seems that even the teacher will not be in the future. I don't know. Wait a while, you will suffer, but don't wink in front of me. Gollum. Zoro and Dusky couldn't help but look at each other. In their eyes, Hawkeye is a serious and unsmiling existence. The first time I have seen such a very iron and steel attitude. If not, I can feel the sharp-edged aura of Hawkeye's body converging in his body. And Long Yu testified, they thought they had gone through the wrong door. However, for Long Yu's insistence, let the Baboon King have a 1-2 with them. This level of confidence, Zoro and Dusky, also have a kind of surprise at the same time. There is also a feeling of being underestimated by my own teacher. Teacher, we are ready. Zoro clenched his knives in his backhand and pointed diagonally at the ground. Dusky, who was on the side, didn't speak, but her high concentration of energy gave her a feeling of being sharp, edged. This caused the eagle eye on the side to take another look. Received the news in advance through a special channel, and knew why the Navy headquarters recruited Laxus to join the Navy headquarters. However, the things that have been heard are nothing compared to what you have seen with your own eyes. At least, in his eyes, the two students in front of them were already very good just because of their rainbow-like aura. This made Hawkeye a little worried about King Baboon. Okay, it seems that both of you are determined to win, and at the same time, you should also have a feeling of being despised by the teacher. Long Yu smiled and patted the Baboon King's arm, and said, however, I still warn you not to take chances against any enemy. As my new student, King Baboon, let's bring the gift first. Of Bone King and Laxus have reached more than 60% fidelity, so sharing low-level skills is not a problem. What's more, bloodline reshaping is the Bone King's innate magical power, and it is not very difficult to use. Thinking of this, Long Yu's eyes fell on the Baboon King, and he snapped his fingers. When the Scarlet Magic Circle, without warning, built and extended under the feet of the Baboon King. The speed is fast, and it is condensed in the blink of an eye. Chapter 630, Gone. When a pungent bloody smell filled the air, there was even more, a nauseating urge. The moment when the magic circle was successfully constructed, it turned into a big net like blood flowing and came to life, and threw directly at the Baboon King. Roar! The scarlet blood, as soon as it touched the body of the Baboon King, saw it growl hysterically. The baboon, who was in a coma all around, was instantly startled by this irritable roar. They turned over and stood up, their eyes fell on Long Yu. Immediately afterwards, some baboons with a height of 4 or 5 meters were the first to burst into flames. An instant, in the wasteland, and even in the entire forest. The more than 700 human-like baboons that were originally defeated by Zoro and Dusky, like a torrent, quickly slaughtered towards Long Yu. The violent scene made Zoro and Dusky's faces change dramatically. They can defeat these baboons, most of them rely on, divide and break. Moment, it gathers into a torrent and launches an offensive together. The destructive power and battle difficulty it possesses are not as simple as 1 + 1. Two of them looked at each other, and were about to block 1 or 2 when Long Yu moved. Bang! One step down, the powerful overlord is domineering, rolling away like a frenzy. Wherever he passed, the baboon that passed first, with his swooping stance, suddenly stiffened and stopped in midair. The next moment, his eyes rolled down, and he hit the ground straight in midair. The torrent coming from behind also seemed to be electrocuted at the same moment, and his whole body froze and finally hit the ground, and he passed out happily again. For a time, in the huge wilderness, and in the forest, the mighty movement of the previous moment disappeared in an instant. Seeing a baboon of more than 700 who fell to the ground just face to face, Zoro and Dusky couldn't help but look at each other, and then there was a hint of bitterness on their faces. The moment before, they were still, complacent about defeating the baboons. Looking at Laxus as a teacher right now, he just stared a little and swept the audience directly. This gap is too big to ride a horse. Sure enough, the tyrannical domineering with the capital of the king. Eyes lit up slightly, but he quickly returned to the gods. Laxus, what are you doing to the Baboon King? In Hawkeye's eyes, Long Yu made excellent patterns at will, and the deviation from everything he knew was a little too big. There is absolutely no way to explain it with his knowledge. Feeling the murderous aura locked on him by Eagle Eye, Long Yu didn't take it to heart and said, "Don't worry, the Baboon King is also my student now, I just give him a gift, it's only beneficial and harmless to him. If, after the fact, you think that I killed it, you can cut me with a knife." Roar! The baboon king in the bloody water seems to be responding to Long Yu's words. While roaring up to the sky, the blood water wrapped around its body, like a tide, quickly converged into the body. The last trace of blood dissipated, the huge mountain-like body, covered with blue veins, all converged in an instant. The blood moon-like eyes suddenly opened, and the breath that usually brought tears to people disappeared at this moment. Depths of his pupils, there was a hint of clarity. Looks like good luck. Long Yu secretly breathed a sigh of relief, patted the baboon king on the shoulder and said, "Adjust your breathing and digest the current situation at the same time. I believe you can do it soon." The inexplicable words caused Hawkeye and Zoro to be slightly startled. Seeing the baboon king staring at Long Yu for 7 or 8 more seconds, he nodded and sat down with his head cross-legged. Compared with the feral tyranny just now, it was obviously a different kind of feeling. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, this is the same baboon king, they probably wouldn't want to believe that the scene in front of them was real. The vast wilderness fell into a dead silence. Looked as if the king of the baboons had been replaced by a baboon, not to mention Sauron and Dusky, and even Hawkeye. However, after looking at the baboon king who sat down casually, the eagle's eyes changed several times, but he still gave up the idea of asking of baboons instead of pulling down the identity to guess. Thinking of this, Hawkeye took another look at the baboon king, then dropped a few words, turned and walked into the castle. "I'm going to prepare some drinks for you." Looking at the situation, the baboon king still needs some time. "You should also rest." Seeing this scene, the war intent that Sauron and Dusky radiated from their bodies suddenly restrained, and after looking at each other, Sauron could only sit down, rest. However, after hesitating for a moment, Dasichi walked towards Long Yu quickly. "Teacher, I want to know, is it true that women can't compare to men when it comes to kendo?" Dusky was the first to ask questions. The words fall, immediately. Soren's nerves were tense. After all, this question was often talked about by Guina a long time ago. If he was a child, Sauron did not know the importance of this question. So after living for so many years and growing to this level, Sauron clearly knows whether there is a gap between men and women. Now that Dusky mentioned this question, Soren's nerves were tense, and he was eager to find the exact answer from Laxus, who was a teacher. Chapter 631. The dripping stone wears the water, and the soft energy overcomes the rigidity. Regardless of whether Dusky as Guina can also comfort her unwillingness that day. "Dusky, are you upset?" Long Yu lightly reached out and rubbed Dusky's head lightly. Dusky has long been accustomed to teachers who like to touch their heads and kill. Faced with this rhetorical question, Dusky hesitated for a moment, then nodded heavily. The fight just now, it was her who had the first chance at the beginning. Sauron was able to overtake in the follow-up, and finally won by a small gap, which undoubtedly exposed Dusky's weakness more significantly. As a woman, the gap between wrist strength, physical strength, stamina, and men's overall physical quality will obviously widen once it lasts for a long time. In the final competition just now, Dusky's wrist was obviously trembling. A thorn that had been left in her heart was provoked. "Would you be disappointed if I said that there is a difference in physical strength between men and women?" Long Yu withdrew his hand. After seeing a gleam of gloom on Dusky's face, he said, "Did you see the human-like baboons on the ground? Do you think humans can have more strength and endurance than baboons? If they are stronger, then how can you win? Since you have won, where is the victory? Skill, speed, experience, thinking, etc. You have to know that there is not only one way to win, but a combination of factors, which is the final result." Having said this, Long Yu patted Dasiki's head and said, "There is a saying in my hometown, that dripping water is worn by stones, and soft energy overcomes strength." The slightly elusive voice reverberated between the heavens and the earth like a magic sound at this moment. Regardless of it was Sauron or Dasichi, even the eagle eyes that came out carrying the red wine couldn't help but change slightly, looking at Long Yu with a hint of disbelief. As the supreme swordsman, Hokage has a deeper understanding of kendo. When I heard this, I became more aware of what it was like. This child is not simple. At least, Hokage thinks that he cannot reach this height at all. Dripping stoneware, Ronunk Gangdasiki's red lips lightly opened and muttered, his eyes brightened, and at the end, the gloom on his face disappeared. He smiled sweetly, and bowed. Teacher, thank you. I've already figured out that it belongs to my own way. Please ask the teacher to continue to guide me in the future. It's good to understand. Get ready, I think Baboon. Baboon King should also be finished. Long Yu rubbed Dusky's head again and looked at the Baboon King beside him. Originally sitting cross-legged, a huge body like a meat mountain, at this moment, the tightly closed eyes suddenly opened. The scarlet blood, in the pupils, faded like a tide, and the tyranny that usually occupied its temperament disappeared in an instant. It feels more calm and human. A bizarre scene made Hawkeye's brows frown, and there was a feeling of confusion. Dusky, do you really understand? Zoro couldn't help but ask. As a Lukai, he still needs to be trained in combination with actual combat, in order to be able to understand the true meaning of it more easily. You can understand, don't talk nonsense, the Baboon King is ready, I feel this is a tough battle, don't hold me back. Dusky responded indifferently, his eyes locked on the Baboon King who strode out like a shooting star. For a time, the atmosphere of the huge wilderness suddenly changed. Zoro also put the word heat out into his mouth with his backhand, and tied the green patch on his head tightly. He exhaled and exhaled lightly, which seemed a bit harsh in the dead silence. The moment the three pairs of eyes suddenly met, the fighting intent that had been accumulated was instantly detonated. Bang! With great strides, the whole ground roared like thunder. Baboon King took the lead, with a huge body like a mountain, and there was no sense of cumbersomeness at all. Like a pair of horses, it instantly shortened the distance of dozens of meters and appeared in front of Zoro and Dusky. The huge black knife in his hand flew down suddenly, and it slashed down with an awe-inspiring smashing sound. A single move, the pure strength is released, and even the oncoming wind makes the skin feel a tingling sensation. Facing this violent blow, Soren's pupils shrank slightly, and the muscles in his arms suddenly tensed, instantly inflating like a balloon. Tutu Li Gangluo, Tiger. Three knives overlapped and collided with the huge black knives in the next moment with a gesture of resignation. Bang! The dull collision sound resounded like thunder. Of the huge impact force, a gust of wind was formed and rolled back. Sauron, who was standing below, received this blow from the front. His body was obviously shorter, and he lost a little in strength. He could counterattack. Zoro suddenly discovered that Dusky, who was standing beside him, had disappeared. Chapter 632, Three Swords Flow, Qinglong Yin, Flowing Water. Cut the rain and snow. The crisp and tender drink suddenly sounded. A figure like a ghost appeared behind the Baboon King without warning. Shiyu held in his hand, without any fancy, like a pear blossom in a torrential rain, pouring down towards the back of the Baboon King. The violent scene changed Soren's expression slightly, and even Hawkeye was no exception. Puff puff, the pear blossom-like sword light of the rainstorm poured out like a frenzy, directly covering most of the Baboon King's back. Looking at the head-to-head with Zoro, a completely different attack method. Hawkeye showed a hint of shock. This shock is not only due to Dusky's extraordinary comprehension ability. More, as a teacher's discernment imparting. Without proper guidance, Dusky may still be trapped in the idea that women are worse than men. Instead of choosing a path that belongs to you. Roar! The Baboon King felt the dangerous aura coming from behind, and before he had time to think about it, he let out a low roar. Who was clenched tightly in his hand, suddenly swung towards his back. Bang! With a knife, the air seems to be smashed 5, normal. The tyrannical slashing force turned into a fierce vacuum slash at the moment of squeezing the air. It collided with the sword light that fell from the sky. Bang! A dull collision sounded, and a large number of astral blades were directly detonated under the collision with no effort. Who was deep in the air, was the first to be attacked by this aura. He clenched Shiyu tightly with his backhand, his delicate hands fluttering like a butterfly, blocking the oncoming attack accurately and without error. When the crisp metal collision sounded, Dusky stepped out of the moon and opened the distance again. If one misses a hit, then pull the distance away and wait for an opportunity. This is the fighting method that Dusky, in order to deal with this kind of power-type opponent, specially thought of. Looking at his attack, he was instantly stopped, and the black knife in the hands of the Baboon King was clenched again. Long Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, the nine-hook jade slowly came, and the moment when the scarlet blood quickly took over the pupil, the eternal kaleidoscope writing wheel was driven by him forcibly cross-border. King Baboon is known to imitate the existence of Eagle Eye. Can be said that it is more of an opponent of Hokage's sword practice. Perhaps, without rebuilding the bloodline, there is no way to comprehend the true meaning of Eagle Eye Kendo. However, now it has been reborn. Therefore, Long Yu wanted to use this fight to copy everything about Eagle Eye Kendo on the Baboon King. Then, with the help of the instant full level system, to achieve complete marriage. Degree of connection. Bang! The backhand is a knife. The huge black knife in the hands of the Baboon King slammed into the air again. However, this time, its huge body suddenly turned like a top. The air squeezed around, under the tearing of the sharp blade, turned into a sword gang that filled the sky, like a sword blade storm. Formed an indiscriminate slash. Just after exiting the 7th or 8th, Dasiki's expression changed slightly, and Shiyu's hands were quickly covered by a burst of armed colors. The next moment, without any hesitation, the force slashed down. Cut the rain and break the sky. Bang! The huge knife gang smashed out with the force of the knife and collided with the oncoming blade storm. The face of the current intensive offensive, Dusky obviously changed the way to deal with it. Choose to collide with strength and quantity. Sauron, who witnessed this scene, blocked one or two attacks with 3 swords one after another, and then, the moment he raised his head, his armed arrogance also spread rapidly. The 3 knives instantly turned into the color of black steel, the sharp eyes locked on the Baboon King, and the hands suddenly clenched the hilt of the knife. Out of breath of turbid air, and Zoro knew clearly that to solve the dilemma in the field, the first thing he had to do was to completely reverse the initiative of the Baboon King. 3 knives flowing, blue dragon and flowing water. Bang! The azure light is like water, and the knife light is like a river. In an instant, Sauron appeared in front of the Baboon King in the blink of an eye. The famous sword held in his hand slashed down with a fierce and unparalleled attitude. Bang bang bang! The blade of the sword along the way was shattered instantly. In the blade storm, a hole was torn open, and it went straight to the back of the Baboon King. This blow really hits. I am afraid that the huge body of the Baboon King will not be able to bear it. Sure enough, 1 on 2, no matter what. The Baboon King is as powerful as a river, obviously a little powerless. Even Hawkeye's nerves were suddenly tense. Full body armed and domineering. A low voice suddenly sounded. These slightly jerky words gave the Baboon King a fragrant feeling in his mouth. Not to mention Sauron and Dusky. Even the closest eagle eye, his pupils shrank suddenly, and his face was full of disbelief. Not long ago, he was still having a headache because the Baboon King couldn't understand domineering, thinking that unless he had some chance, he couldn't go further. Never occurred to me that after a short span of 10 minutes, this baboon brother not only spit out fragrant words, but also clamored for a domineering look. Is this a joke? Fei Lu reminds you. Read 3 things to watch the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 playmates, find 99 novels and LT. Please keep this paragraph for collection, otherwise the collection IP will be banned. NGT. Chapter 633, Breathing Fragrance. The slight vibration of the air suddenly sounded. The Baboon King's body, the jet black armed color is domineering, and the moment it spreads rapidly, it gives people an indestructible metallic taste. The next moment, without any bells and whistles, he raised his hand and blocked Soren's attack. Boom! The dull thunder, like collision sound suddenly echoed. The huge impact force rolled back like a frenzy, and the three fighting figures finally pulled away again. Sauron and Dashki, who were also shocked, were revealed. At this moment, they finally knew why they found a different feeling in the Baboon King. This is the transformation of the Baboon King, which opens up the IQ. Most importantly, under the influence of Eagle Eyes, the Baboon King has already been imprinted in the mind of the domineering knowledge. But being able to remember, and knowing how to use it, are two completely different things. Right now, Long Yu helps the Baboon King to rebuild his bloodline and open his mind. Undoubtedly, let the accumulated Baboon King take the most important step. Looking under the moonlight, his whole body was like black steel. The Baboon King, glowing with black metallic luster, looks like an iron tower. Atmosphere at the scene changed slightly. If you keep fighting like this, you don't know when it will end. Of the Baboon King fell on Sauron and Dusky. With a low voice, he suddenly clenched the huge black knife with both hands. This is the strongest slash that I can perform now. I hope you can take it safely. The Baboon King breathed out the fragrance again. When both hands and 10 fingers were suddenly clenched, the domineering aura of armament on the body quickly converged, pouring into the black sword knight in his hands like a frenzy. The domineering black ink, covering the blade of the blade, an indescribable aura permeates the air. There was even a trace, and the black arc splashed out. This is the omen of Liu Ying. Looking at this scene, Long Yu couldn't help but be a little surprised. In his calculations, it is very good that the Baboon King can understand the basic use of domineering. Now even Liu Sakura is almost in control. The next strongest slash is even more expected. The huge ruined battlefield, accompanied by the breath of the Baboon King, climbed to the extreme step by step. The huge black knife clenched tightly in his hand burst out with a clear breath. This made Long Yu's eyes widen. At this moment, it seems to have caught something. However, for all this, Long Yu needs to find the final answer in the next battle. What a strong breath, it seems that the teacher can. Wrong student was chosen. Zoro clenched Hidao's words tightly, and clenched his hands slightly. In my mouth, I originally planned to recite poetry and read the skill bar. However, thinking of Long Yu's personal teaching not long ago, the thoughts in his mind were instantly annihilated. Master, life and death are just a moment. What Sauron had to do was to grasp this moment well, and pour his own, unstoppable will into the attack. Thinking of this, Sauron closed his eyes under the watchful eyes of the public, urging his jerky knowledge and domineering. Looking at this scene, Dusky let out a deep breath. Shiyu's slender hands clenched tightly, and a stream of cherry blossoms flowed, and the next moment, under the stare of her beautiful eyes, the aura emanating from her body quickly adjusted. Who witnessed this scene, was startled at first, and then he couldn't help laughing. He clearly knew that the current Dusky had come out of confusion, and at the same time had mastered his own fighting style. Roar! A wild roar like thunder burst out. Of King Baboon's hands swelled like a rock, and the black saber yi, which was clenched tightly at the next moment, suddenly swung out without any fancy. Black knife flows in the sky. Boom! With one blow, the entire space in front of you seems to be shaken. The power accumulated on the huge black knife suddenly vented out, turned into a black piece of training, and rolled towards Zoro and Dusky head-on. Looking at this scene, Long Yu's eyes became brighter and brighter. If he remembered correctly, this should be the sword press. It is also the difference between Zoro and Hawkeye in the original book. Unexpectedly, the Baboon King relied on the advantages of brute force and weapons and reluctantly displayed it. Feeling the huge aura coming towards him, Sauron, who closed his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes, and the light in the depths of his pupils skyrocketed. Like a phantom, the three knives converged into one line. 3,000 worlds of three swords and profound meanings. 6 style profound meanings paper painting martial body Liu Ying, black iron and slashing rain. Cold and tender drinks sounded in unison. In Dusky's hands instantly unsheathed. Compared with Soren's omnipotence, Dusky's focus is obviously to rely on the advantages of women's agility and to display faster, stronger, and sharper slashes. Bang! 3 slashes, without the slightest suspense, collided with each other. Under the echo of the thunder-like explosion, the violent airwaves rolled back at the same time, and the sharp blades of slashing, like a torrential rain, shot towards all directions. The surrounding trees and deserted rocks, along with the broken stone pillars outside the castle, were the first to be affected. Chapter 634, Ignorance. Facing the aftermath of the incoming attack, Hokage also took out the black knife and blocked it. Only, Long Yu was still standing in the same place, with a pair of blood moon-like eyes, 9-hook jade madly turned. Combine everything in front of you, combine your own abilities and knife skills, and quickly combine them. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, learning the black knife Yi Liukong. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have learned the 3,000 worlds of the 3 swords. Ding dang, congratulations to the host, learning the paper-painted martial arts body, Sakura, black iron, and rain. The ethereal prompting sounds of the 3 systems reverberated in Long Yu's mind. Feeling the complicated flow of information, Long Yu did not immediately. I went to browse, but closed my eyes and quickly deduced. Phew, the tyrannical collision of air waves rolled back, and it lasted for 7 or 8 seconds before it completely calmed down. Staying in the ruins, the diffuse sand and dust dissipated. The 3 figures were still standing in place. Starting from the collision center, one after another hideous ravines spread quickly like sharp claws. Hokage glanced at the baboon queen, and secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and said, "Okay, this battle is a draw, let's go here, and if we continue to fight, we will not be able to distinguish the winner." Laxus, what do you think? Voice fell, Long Yu slowly opened his eyes, raised his head and looked down, saying, "Hokage, decide according to what you said. Next, they will be handed over to you. It seems that we have to stay after the battle, but that guy arrived early." "The guy is here." Hokage's expression changed slightly, he just wanted to know the result urgently, ignoring the vigilance around him. Most importantly, Long Yu used a method similar to Anilu to use thunder and lightning combined with his own knowledge and domineering. Once someone appears within a dozen nautical miles, Long Yu can clearly perceive it. "Teacher, what's going on?" Zoro shook his hands slightly, took off the word Hidao in his mouth and said, "Why don't you leave it to me to deal with it?" The last battle just now was obviously not enough for Sauron, who had just figured out the endless belief in Kendo. "Little devil, that's not what you can do now, just stay here." Hokage glanced at Sauron and said lightly. It can be said that after watching the battle with his own eyes, Long's fighting style and will is very similar to his philosophy. Based on his eyes alone, Hokage believed that Zoro was a very good swordsman. Only thing that felt a pity was that Long Yu was the first to meet him. "Not an opponent I can deal with." Zoro was slightly startled. Questions, he saw Hokage turned and walked into the castle. 7 or 8 seconds, he walked out again. However, this time, there was a dusty wooden box in his hand. This wooden box is 1 meter long, with various strange patterns carved on it, giving people an inexplicable feeling of depression. "Looking at how empty-handed you are, you probably didn't have a weapon ready. Originally, this thing was meant to be given to that guy, but I didn't expect to lose an arm in the East China Sea. This time it's a bargain for you." Hokage threw the wooden box to Long Yu. "For a long time, I haven't met a person who can fight. Come back alive and return the things to me. Don't forget, you still owe me a fight." Who has always been taciturn, suddenly turned into a talker. Long Yu was also a little unaccustomed to it. However, as Hokage said, opponents are hard to come by. In particular, it is more difficult for the opponents to have similar smells. Looking down at the heavy wooden box in his hand, Long Yu smiled genially. Thank you so much. Roar. The sound of dragon roar suddenly sounded like thunder. In the originally bright night sky, like the gathering of wind and clouds, a large cloud of lead appeared. Stream of thunder light, a huge black shadow quickly shuttled through it. Facing this violent scene, the expressions of Zoro and Dusky couldn't help but change dramatically. Roar. The sound of dragon roar, mixed with the smell of cloud-piercing cracking stone, rolled away. A huge black shadow quickly shuttled through the lead cloud. Everyone could react. A huge dragon head rushed out from the dense cloud of lead. Under the blood moon-like eyes, the two dragon beards gave people a feeling of fluttering in the wind. Gaze was in vain, across the endless time and space, and locked on Long Yu's body. Laxus, you brat, I finally found you. The short words rolled and scattered like thunder. Looking at this huge figure and exaggerated way of appearing, the expressions of Dusky and Zoro changed drastically. It can be said that they are not ignorant people who are just out of the sea. After experiencing the riots in the Chambord archipelago, I clearly know the origin of the giant dragon in front of me. Kaido of the Beasts. This is one of the 4 emperors of the sea in the New World, the admiral of the Beasts pirates. Now, in order to avenge Jack, he came from the New World in person. Chapter 635, Ruins Kingdom Island. Committed to a younger generation, if you don't see it with your own eyes, who wants to believe that all this is true? Teacher. Sauron was in a hurry. However, as soon as he blurted out the words, he was pulled down by the eagle-eyed probe. In the northwest of this island, there is a deserted island. Where can you go? As the master of the Ruins Kingdom, Hawkeye didn't plant the flag here to declare sovereignty, but he also didn't want to make a nest and let Long Yu and Kaido fight here. After all, after this brief contact, Hawkeye clearly knew that the young man in front of him was not as simple as the one in front of him. It is unimaginable what the outcome will be once the war begins. Otherwise, Hawkeye would not take out the treasure at the bottom of the box and bet on Long Yu casually. Understood, then I'll go first. Long Yu smiled lightly. After looking up at Kaido, he said, since you're here, just follow me and don't cause trouble for others. Voice fell, and the lightning flashed on Long Yu's body, turning it into a drill, and lacing towards the deserted island pointed by the eagle eye. In the face of Long Yu's actions, if it were changed to the usual, Kaido would definitely ignore it, and start a violent attack. The eagle-eyed Mohawk standing in front of the wilderness castle below. In front of the title of the world's #1 swordsman, Kaido could only snort uncomfortably and temporarily put away his willfulness. The huge body slammed down suddenly, chasing after Long Yu. Seeing the two figures leaving quickly, Zoro and Dusky couldn't help but look anxious. They knew very well that Long Yu didn't let them intervene just now, just because he didn't want them to be involved in this matter. Let's go. I think you all want to watch the battle too, but without my approval, you must not shoot. Hawkeye said indifferently. Once you take action, the agreement between me and that guy will be voided. Kaido wants to kill you, but I don't care. Facing Kaido, Hawkeye is not afraid, but when he thinks of that crazy way of thinking. With that suicidal temperament, Hawkeye doesn't want to be stared at by a lunatic. Don't worry, if the time comes, we are not afraid of death. Sauron put the 3 famous swords in their sheaths, turned and chased after them quickly. Compared with Sauron, Dusky remained silent. But the decisive color in the beautiful eyes showed no meaning. I'm going too. The Baboon King said awkwardly. With his backhand, he quickly followed. For a time, in the huge ruins of the war, only Hawkeye was left hanging on the spot. Hey, where did that guy get his charm, so that these guys are not afraid of death? I don't want to wipe your ass for you, don't die for me. Hawkeye sighed helplessly, and quickly followed. Island of the Kingdom of Ruins, 7 or 8 pirate ships gathered quickly in all directions. At the same time, a 2-masted sailboat in the shape of a news bird was fast approaching. As the big news Morgans who controls the first-hand news information in the New World, he is obviously standing on the deck of the sailboat. It can be said that as soon as they got the information that the beast pirates were chasing and killing Laxus, Big News Morgans, with the so-called news sense, captured this incident as not easy. Directly let people control the headquarters, and fly across the sea to the nearby island. Half a day ago, after getting the information that Kaido was in person, he rushed over. Editor-in-Chief Morgans, Kaido the Beast flew out from the desert island in front, and it seems that Laxus is in front of him. A news practitioner was the first to shout in a hurry. They came out. Morgans looked anxious, quickly grabbed the telescope, and said anxiously, "Did those two guys fight? This is big news. Let me broadcast it quickly. The supernova of the Navy will meet Kaido, the chief commander of the beast pirates, and what will spark out? It really makes people eager to know. Hey, even Jack, one of the three disasters, is here. Didn't that guy dislike Shame last time?" Looking at the editor-in-chief who opened his mouth and ran the train with his mouth full. The newsman on the deck almost gagged Morgans. They didn't want to be targeted by the beast pirates, that group of lunatics. "Boss Jack, what should we do now?" The distance, 7 pirate ships gathered together. On the deck of the leading ship, Jack looked gloomily from afar and said, "You bastard, dare to attack me? Give me up to catch up with Boss Kaido at full speed, and I will sink that kid into the sea." Island. Hip Hister's expression changed, and he said anxiously, "Boss Kaido said, let's not hinder him from recruiting that kid and rush to the island. If we make Boss Kaido unhappy, I'm afraid. For Moody, drink high and then spit fragrant fragrance. And even Kaido, who swings a mace and plays bowling. The people present did not tend to be abused." "Damn, do you mean that if you're afraid of Kaido boss, you're not afraid of me?" Jack's face sank, and an angry roar rose. "Whoever dares to go against my will, I will cut him in half." Chapter 636, Not the One Who Suffers. "I want to sink that kid into the sea with my own hands. Even if he kneels and begs Kaido to join the beast pirates, it won't change at all." The rolling voices have a dignified taste. Seeing the boyish outburst of Jack, Hip Hister's expression stiffened, and he could only turn around to give an order. As Jack's confidant, he is also a member of the beast pirates. He knew very well that the 100 beast pirates didn't have many things, and they had the most lunatics. If he doesn't go, I'm afraid he will really be killed. With Jack's order falling, the 7 pirates had to bite the bullet, speed up, and rush to the deserted island. For a time, what happened in the Fossa waters quickly spread throughout the great waterway under the broadcast of Morgans. New World, Unknown Sea Area, in the Hive Island. As the lair of Lox, the former pirate overlord, after the Battle of the Island of Gods. With Lox being killed by Garp and Roger together, the once brilliant Lox pirates completely collapsed. After the split, Whitebeard, known as the strongest man in the sea, became the owner of Honeycomb Island. The huge Moby Dick is moored on the coast. An iron tower-like figure stood on the bow deck, looking down at the 2 people fighting below. "Dad, there is a big incident, do you need to tell Ace?" Marco came hurriedly in the cabin with the phone bug. The captains scattered around, drinking and sleeping, reacted one after another and looked at Marco unexpectedly. As the captain of the first team, and the strongest on the ship, second only to Whitebeard, they rarely see Marco showing such an anxious look. "Brother Marco, something happened that I can't tell me." Ace's voice suddenly sounded. Soon a swirl of fiery flames was seen, detonating on the coast with a bang. After turning into a flame that soared into the sky, Ace's figure shot out from it and finally landed on the deck of the ship. Rayleigh, who was still training at the beginning, reluctantly stuck the iron rod on the ground, took out the wine jug and took a sip, and then also dodged and boarded the boat. Riley was a little helpless about Ace's slacking halfway through, and wanted to know what was going on that made the dignified Whitebeard first team captain Marco show such an anxious expression. Feeling the gazes all around him, Mar subconsciously looked at Whitebeard. "Just say it, man." Whitebeard said, slightly displeased. In his eyes, except for one Rayleigh, they are all his godsons. If there are any secrets, it will make this family more estranged. Looking at this scene, Marco sighed helplessly. I received urgent information just now that the madman Kaido has appeared in the Fossa Sea area. I remember that the Fossa Sea area was in the first half of the Great Waterway. That lunatic would go to that kind of place, where birds don't poop. Is he planning to commit suicide again? Whitebeard frowned, showing a hint of confusion. If this is what you call urgent information, Marco, I'm a little unhappy. Father, this matter is not as simple as you think. Marco hurriedly explained. A month and a half ago, in the Navy, that kid named Laxus defeated Droughtjack, one of the 3 plagues, in the Chambord Islands. The beast Kaido, not only did he rescue himself, but now he is still in the Fossa Sea area, on the island where Mahawk, the Eagle Eye of the 7 Martial Seas, is located, and he has met the Navy kid. These words fell, the people present were stunned for a while, and there was a look of disbelief on their faces. Even Rayleigh is no exception. Marco, what do you mean, the beast Kaido guy, personally looking for trouble with a junior? Doesn't this disgrace the face of the 4 emperors? Whitebeard's expression sank, and he said sternly. The 4 emperors have lived for a long time. In the eyes of Whitebeard, nothing is more important than fame. If it wasn't for honor, in the original book, the red-haired Shanks persuaded him again and again, and at the same time he personally boarded the ship and met with the Whitebeard. Preventing Ace from chasing Blackbeard alone will not be strictly rejected by Whitebeard. Right now, Whitebeard, the head of the 4 emperors, is undoubtedly ashamed of Kaido's actions. Most importantly, Kaido made his own move, in case the stepping stone he chose for Ace was destroyed. For him, he didn't want to see it. What's the reaction from the Navy? Whitebeard said in a deep voice, that boy has the strength to defeat one of the 3 disasters, Jack Drought. Once he really joins the Navy headquarters, he will definitely be able to shine. It is not impossible to become a general. With the urination of the Warring States period, he will never let that guy be recruited by Kaido, or killed. Right now, Kaido will not hesitate to take action personally. If the Warring States period must protect that kid, I am afraid it will lead to a full-scale war. Riley couldn't hold his breath. He never imagined that after the separation of the Chambord Islands, Longyu's tossing ability would have grown to such a level. Rayleigh is right, Kaido's madman is not the one who suffers. Don't forget that behind him is Odin's Wano country, and that bastard serpent, the combined main force of his subordinates is 60,000. Whitebeard agreed in a deep voice. And those affiliated pirate regiments, among the 4 of us, there are more troops than that guy Lingling. I'm afraid it will reach 150,000. Chapter 637, Like a Person. As the 4 emperors, the threshold for joining Kaido is very low. As long as you have the ability of animal devil fruit, or are willing to try to take artificial devil fruit, you can get the blessing of Kaido. Moreover, among the 4 emperors, the behavior of the 100 beast pirates and the pirates is completely unreasonable, burning, killing and looting. On the contrary, it attracted a lot of vicious pirates. Just now, when I got the information, I also contacted the eyeliner in the Navy. Marco explained in a hurry. Half a day ago, Admiral Warring States held a supreme meeting to decide whether to use all the naval headquarters to bless Laxus. It was even more confrontation with the General Akainu. In the end, the General Staff, Crane, in order to quell the dispute, handed over the decision to Laxus. The answer given by that kid is to solve it alone. Of the people present suddenly changed drastically. Even Whitebeard was moved by it. In their eyes, the 4 emperors were equivalent to their father's Whitebeard, who is now known as a naval supernova, actually gave such a crazy answer. Could it be that there is really a solution? Or is it just plain stupid death? Brother Marco, what's the result? Ace was the first to lose his temper. Not long ago, he lost the stepping stone of the skeleton demon. If even the new target is as crazy as the skeleton demon, it is known as the existence of the new 5 emperors. How could he compare? Ace, don't worry, now that big news guy Morgans is broadcasting, it seems that Kaido just met that kid. It's still unknown how things will develop. Marco took out a phone bug with his backhand. Looking at this scene, Ace didn't have time to think about it, and quickly snatched it away, turning on the phone bug projection. The sound of the radio waves and the pictures constructed by the equipment on board instantly attracted the attention of everyone on board. Compared to Whitebeard's ignorance, Rayleigh was also confused. He knew very well that Laxus was really one of them. But according to his calculations, Long Yuli would not reveal his identity at such a time. He refused the support of the Navy, then how to get out under the eyes of Kaido. With the dimensional version of Morgans, the entire Great Waterway was stirred. Facing the 4 emperors Kaido, most of the pirates feel shameless when they commit themselves to chasing a young man. But I can only think about it in my heart. After all, Kaido is the 4th emperor, so he can do whatever he likes. Not ordinary people can change. However, compared to this kind of thing, they are more concerned about the beast Kaido who plays cards out of common sense. How will the Navy supernova, famous in the Chambord Islands, deal with it? Naval Headquarters, Marin Vandone. A dense crowd of naval soldiers and generals gathered on the square. Originally, they had heard about the urgent summoning of all the generals stationed by the headquarters of the Navy. However, I never thought that such a big mistake would appear after half a day. The urgent news broadcast on one side directly detonated the naval headquarters. In the face of this kind of thing that the paper can't contain the fire, the Warring States period completely dispelled the idea of stopping it. After all, some things, if you have to stop. Instead, it will backfire. Laxus, you kid can't I? Warring States stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the office, looking at the projection in the distance, and sighed faintly. You bastard Akainu, I will definitely visit him after that guy, and let him understand what can be done and what can't be done. Zepha's voice sounded from behind without warning. Looking at the shattered teacup in his hand is enough to explain his mood at this moment, which cannot be described in words at all. Haha, Zepha, you old boy, I remember that you are older than me, and half your body is buried in the grave. Garp, who was digging his nostrils at the side, laughed loudly. That lunatic Akainu didn't like to listen to your lectures when he was in the boot camp. Now that he is a general, if he asks you to reprimand him, he will be a jerk. However, you 2 bad old men, you don't need to worry too much here. I think that boy feels very similar to a person. Like a person. Zepha was stunned for a moment and said, Who is Garp? Your brain, when will you know how to think about things? You're a jerk. Garp glared at him, but was quickly discouraged, and said with his hands in his arms, This kid looks like a thoughtful feeling like the great skeleton demon and Uchiha Ryu. I don't know which guy put this monster into the Push City. I met him 10 or 8 years ago, and I was able to accept him as a grandson. Being a grandson, why does this sentence sound a little familiar to Whitebeard, that old guy, but he is always yelling for a son. Zepha snorted coldly. However, Laxus and the great skeleton demon are not the same kind of people. Don't talk nonsense here, you old man, or I will pull out your tongue. Chapter 638, 2 Choices. Who was suddenly aggressive and guarding his cubs? Karp rolled his eyes and was about to say something. The square below had become a commotion. A picture appeared, that the kid named Laxus finally met Kaido the Beast. My god, how huge is this body? It is completely different from the dragon we know. It is said that Kaido, the Beast, is taking the devil fruit. It should be an illusory beast. Patience. However, confronting the 4 emperors head-on will probably result in a lot of misfortune. Quote. The scene suddenly changed. It became noisy. Let Zengguo Zepha and others also become impatient, and walked quickly to the balcony, looking at the projection of the phone bug in the distance. On the screen, a huge desert island appeared, and within the lead cloud accumulated in the sky, a huge dragon-shaped body was entrenched in it. The dragon's head glared angrily, and an aura that was not angry was generated from the bottom of my heart. Turning his eyes in vain, he locked onto the one below, the disparate body shape. For a time, an inexplicable depressing breath was born from the heart. Boss Kaido, leave this kid to me. If he hadn't attacked me last time, I wouldn't have lost at all, so let me sink him into the sea. Jack's roar sounded suddenly. Soon, the leading pirate ship was seen, and it washed directly to the shore. That savage attitude is exactly the same as the consistent style of the beast pirates. I saw that as soon as the pirate ship docked, Jack's huge body jumped out from the bow deck and stepped on the shore. When he saw Long Yu, Jack's stern cheeks showed a ferocious taste that could not be hidden. Little devil, die for me. Jack roared. The huge body seemed not to be a burden at this moment. Under the sudden heavy step, with a stern sound of breaking through the air, he went straight to Long Yu head-on. The violent scene instantly tensed everyone's nerves. They never thought that Kaido, one of the three disasters, could not help but take action as soon as he appeared. However, this cannot be blamed on him. Since the incident on the Chambord Islands, the title of Drought Jack has become a disgrace to this sea. Most importantly, after this incident was reported back to Wano, there were a lot of reprimands from those two. It's been a long time now, but it's better for Jack. Chance for revenge. Stop. Kaido's roar suddenly sounded. With the awe-inspiring sound of breaking the air, dragon claws covered with scales fell from the sky and swept straight towards Jack. Boom. The violent scene made Jack never think of it. No, it should be said that everyone present did not expect that Kaido, one of the four emperors, would be rude to the people under his command. Accompanied by the dull sound of collision, Jack's huge body was thrown into the air like a sandbag, hitting the Rocky Mountain dozens of meters away. Bang! The Rocky Mountain collapsed with a sound. Jack's huge body rolled on the ground several times before it could be stopped. Looking at the embarrassed Jack, the people present were stunned. It was originally planned to look forward to watching Kaido beat the Navy supernova. Didn't even think that I would beat up my own people as soon as I played. Stupid guy, stand by me. Kaido roared angrily. The huge dragon's might rolled away without reservation at this moment. Wherever he passed, it was like flying sand and rocks, and even the seas that were approaching were tumbling with big waves. Witnessing this scene, even the pirates on the 7 pirate ships that were approaching turned pale all of a sudden. Just that Kaido was not as powerful as the pirates accompanying the ship, and what happened to Jack who fell to the ground, his eyes turned and locked on Long Yu's body in vain, and Shen Sheng spoke again. Little devil, I heard that you have the ability of a devil fruit in the form of a thunder dragon of the animal-type phantom beast. I, Kaido, have always valued talents, and now I give you 2 choices. 2 choices. The thunderous voices rolled away like a frenzy. Regardless of. Yes, the pirates who were watching, or those who saw all this through the live broadcast, couldn't help but look shocked. They never thought that when Kaido the Beast appeared, he not only beat up his own people, but also gave Laxus a choice of valuing him. This inexplicable scene instantly tightened everyone's nerve strings. At this moment, they eagerly wanted to see what options Kaido would give, and what actions Laxus would make without any support from the Navy. Navy kid, whatever. Depending on what you did in the past, I will give you 2 choices when you have the rare fruit, you demons. Kaido spoke again and rolled his mouth. Chapter 639, Arrogant. 1. Surrender to me, I will give you the seat of the 6 sons of the volleyball, and at the same time retain the opportunity to challenge the 3 disasters. As long as you can defeat them, you will become second only to me in the 100 beast pirates. 2. I beat you to be convinced. The awe-inspiring words came out. Compared with the first option, the second one is obviously simpler and cruder. But no matter which one it is enough to show the beast Kaido's value for the naval supernova in front of him. For a time, everyone's eyes turned and locked on Long Yu's body. Fight. Simple 2 words gushed out. At this moment, it was like a thunderbolt, hitting the depths of everyone's soul. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves. In their eyes, Long Yu is not only without the support of the Navy. He is still just a naval supernova. Why can he challenge Kaido head-on with the beasts? This is undoubtedly his own death. What an arrogant person, but just like this, I have the opportunity to sink you into the sea. Jack's roar sounded like thunder. The huge body that was lying on the ground suddenly turned down, and the ability of the devil fruit was brought into full play in an instant. The huge mammoth body gives people a feeling of thick and unparalleled, and the black and ink-like armed color is domineering, and it quickly covers the whole body at the same time. The two pillar-like thighs slammed down towards the ground, and the earth shook violently. A large piece of sand was rolled up, intending to roll towards Long Yu. However, this thought just flashed in Jack's mind. No, it should be said that the scene that just appeared in other people's minds shook everyone's nerves. The sand and dust splashed all over the sky, as if a pair of invisible big hands were stirring. Thunder, covered with scales, like a thunder, instantly crossed a distance of tens of meters and appeared in front of Jack. The face of this annoying fly, Long Yu knew very well that he could only beat it and be afraid of it. Will you understand what a concession is? Start with a big move. This is Long Yu's fighting style. Jack, no one told you, is it fast to be domineering when you are fully armed? Long Yu suddenly raised his head, revealing a hideous smile full of scales. The 5 fingers suddenly clenched. Not only the sound of squeezing came from the air, but also the thunder light was detonated at once. Just like the space along the way, it gives people a feeling like being stirred by an invisible big hand. The collapse fist of the Dragon King, Sakura Thunder Dragon King. Bang! One punch, like a sunny day. Thunderbolt, with a deafening smell. The space along the way seems to be penetrated. Compared with the last time, Long Yu was even in the Lei Dun chakra mode, and the 6th style profound meaning was pushed to the extreme. It can be said that this time, Long Yu not only wants to defeat Jack, but also sinks him into the sea. So close at hand, there is no way to hide. No, it should be said that with Jack's huge body, he was like a target, and he couldn't dodge a thunderstorm at all. Only thing he could do was to watch as Long Yu's fist rapidly expanded in his pupils. Bang! A thunderous explosion exploded. The rolling thunder and light air waves exploded at the moment when the backlog reached the extreme. Endless thunder light poured out like a raging tide, and with a tenacity-like posture, it slammed directly into Jack's body. With the release of giant force, and the power of thunder light detonated. The whole world was instantly shrouded in dazzling light. And the endless explosion wind and waves rolled away like a tidal wave. Wait until all the wind and thunder have dissipated. When the dust in the sky cleared, a figure covered in dragon scales came into view first. The huge body that belonged to Jack disappeared at this moment. I saw that where Long Yu's fist was heading, a huge deep ditch appeared, spreading directly to the coast hundreds of meters away. Wherever he went, everything was razed to the ground. It can be said that the punch of Lei Wei of the frenzy just now completely destroyed 1/10 and 10% of the desert island. Felt as if Drought Jack had been sunk into the sea with a punch. Call. Finishing all this, Long Yu let out a deep breath, suddenly raised his head to look at Kaido, and said, "I'm sorry, I wasted a little time, but I finally sank the annoying people into the sea. However, I think that clumsy guy, with the blood of the fighting fish family, should not let you rush to save it." The small voice swept the audience like a hurricane at this moment. Crazy. Facing the light-hearted look of Long Yu in front of him, he sank Jack into the sea with one punch. Although, this punch seems to be a trick, knocking Jack into the sea. But looking at the whole sea, who can do it? A moment ago, Kaido of the Beasts threatened that as long as Long Yu agreed to join the Beasts' pirates, he would have the strength to challenge the 3 disasters. Chapter 640, Income Under the Command. Right now, Long Yu has not joined, and has sunk Drought Jack into the sea. No, it should be said that this blow has defeated it for the second time. If the first time is to rely on tricks and luck, then the second time, it depends on what to take a step back. Even if it is tricky, it will achieve irrefutable results. Okay, what a kid, I didn't expect your potential to be so strong. Beast Kaido was stunned at first, then laughed loudly. Seeing you like this, I really want to be like Whitebeard and recognize you as a godson. No matter what. It's courage, strength, and even the way he speaks and does things, he is exactly the same as Lao Tzu. If I didn't remember clearly how many sons I had, I'd probably think you were my illegitimate son. Speaking of this, the smile on Kaido's face gradually subsided, his eyes narrowed again, and he said in a deep voice, however, looking at your temperament, I am afraid that it will really hit you to be convinced. Don't worry, the person I like, even if your hands and feet are broken, as in Phantom Beast with Devil Fruit ability, it's all pediatrics. In the huge ruins, the sand and dust gradually subsided. Regardless of, is it the 7 pirate ships watching, or the people who saw the fierce scene just now through the live broadcast? Everyone's faces turned pale. They had heard the rumors in the Chambord Islands. But I never thought that this scene would be so fierce when I saw it with my own eyes. Although, Long Yu seems to be a bit disgusted by taking advantage of the sneak attack. However, on the battlefield, victory or defeat is the most important. Especially between the pirates and the navy, there is only life and death, and there is no ambiguity. It can be said that Long Yu's punch simply subverted everyone's cognition. Especially the scene where Kaido proposed to imitate Whitebeard to dry his son just now. It also gives a feeling of being caught off guard. If you have to say that this is a different treatment, it is enough to see that Kaido values Long Yu, and it is even more unusual. Okay, what a boy, this punch really relieves the anger, and it has the style of the old man. Zephyr laughed out loud, showing excitement on his face. It can be said that from the moment he knew that Long Yu was being hunted down by Kaido, Zephyr planned to support him. Later learned that Long Yu refused all help to face Kaido. Shocked in my heart, I felt more about what Akainu did. Now I can see that Long Yu won by surprise, and a jack sinks into the sea. The breath that was held in his chest only let out a little or two. Zephyr, don't be too happy, it's time to start. Garp's voice came out suddenly. Who was standing at the front, also grabbed the metal guardrail at once. It was so powerful that the guardrail was flattened. For a time, the eyes of the three returned to the screen again. Moved, there are no words, and there is no intention to continue the conversation. Just plain eye contact. This time, Long Yu and Kaido didn't talk nonsense at all, their eyes suddenly glared. Two tyrannical arrogances exploded directly without reservation. Boom! The scarlet-colored aura instantly exploded in Long Yu's body. The violent air wave rolled back like a tidal wave, and collided with the black overlord color that rushed out of Kaido's body. Bang! A thunderous explosion ripped apart. A series of red and black electric lights splattered and stirred in the center of the collision. The surrounding space was distorted at this moment. The domineering impact formed was like a difficult wave, sweeping away all around. The wild land beneath my feet was the first to crack open like a cobweb. Along the way, the sand and dust rolled back and went straight to the 7 pirate ships in the distance. Bang bang bang. Where the domineering passed, the people who were slightly inferior in strength instantly rolled their eyes and smashed directly on the deck. What's more, he fell to the ground with foaming at the mouth. Blink of an eye, there were only a dozen or so people who were still able to stand in place after being baptized. Looking at this scene, the expressions of the people watching the battle after the phone bug changed drastically. They have heard that the Overlord is different from the domineering. But it never occurred to me that at such a moment, I would be able to see with my own eyes two people with the appearance of overlords, and they would not try to confront each other too much. However, even more people felt regretful that the dignified naval headquarters actually let these people fall into the middle of life and death. Little devil, the money of the overlord is really different. I want to bring you under my command even more. Kaido screamed. The huge dragon claws suddenly probed in the void, with a tearing sound of breaking the air, and headed towards Long Yu to catch it. Hit! The surrounding air seemed to be clenched by an invisible big hand. Let Long Yu have a feeling of being in a whirlpool. However, it was precisely because of this feeling that in the battle between King Baboon and Sauron and others not long ago, that kind of epiphany became stronger. It can be said that this time is for Long Yu, who has relied on the system to get to the present. For the first time, I have the feeling of self-renewing and well-fed. However, for now, this scene is not enough.